I want to say what a pleasure it is to have both of you amazing women on here with us too.
Yeah,
Wow,
we admire both of you.
We're very excited.
Very much.
And
Well, thank you. Hi. Okay, I just wanted to, of course, say, and you may have already said this, but today is the day here in the United States where we're commemorating Dr. Martin Luther King Day.
That's true.
And I just wanted to start out by saying this just for everyone to remember when he quoted this: "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter." And I really think that's what this show is all about and what all of us are doing. The other quote that I really like about Martin Luther King and what he said, because of course he was born January 15th of 1929, and he was murdered on April 4th of 1968. And he said this also: "In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends."
Hey guys, welcome to VLTV. We are so excited. We have a fantastic show for you tonight. We are privileged to have with us two amazing, strong, incredible women. I'm going to introduce them. I'm going to start with our first guest tonight. She has a background in land development and residential construction. She became aware of Agenda 21 working in this field. She became a front person expressing opposition to smart meters when they first rolled out, and she's been speaking out about weaponized frequencies, the falsified science of global warming, depopulation, and many other concerning topics to bring community awareness to people everywhere. She has the very informative website, StopTheCrime.net. Welcome to our show, Deborah Tavares. And our next guest is just as impressive. She is a medical doctor, a specialist in neurology and psychiatry and personality disorders in Sweden, but she currently lives in the Czech Republic. She has organized conferences via From Illusion to Reality, which is her YouTube channel, which she has in English, Swedish, and Czech, since she has problems with freedom of speech. She's currently under attack from authorities because she exposes the head of the Illuminati and the New World Order, and because she understands the coded language of the Illuminati in the mainstream media. What a fascinating woman. Welcome to our show. Also, Alexandra JB.
Wow. Wow. Thank you, too, for coming on. Woo. I'm excited.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Just to announce myself in the meeting, I'm Deborah Tavares with StopTheCrime.net and also primarywater.org. As all of you know, here in California, where I am, in Northern California, we're being hit massively with directed energy weapons under the guise of climate change. Mm-hmm. And we have been promised that there will be expansive and increasing fires, and that this will become a global phenomenon of climate change as they intentionally heat up the planet by entrapment of heat and excessive electromagnetic smog and frequencies, and increase droughts and the conditions that will allow for the combustibility of all of us everywhere throughout the world. So I think we need to start naming names, showing faces, and start posting wanted lists for these people, because no longer should they be able to hide out in their dungeons of protection while they're picking us off on top. And that's essentially what's happening. We're at war. And I can say that anything that we're seeing generally now flying overhead, as far as chemtrails goes, these are warplanes. These are not chemtrailing planes. These are warplanes spraying us with biohazards. And we've got to change the vocabulary around this, because I can only say as I look at the documents from the World Bank, and I look at the documents to reduce our water supply, and I look at the climate action plans that every city, every county, every state, every country, and also we've talked about this too, where you are in Prague, Alexandra, there are these climate action plans that list the types of weaponized weather and vector increased bioweapons will be released on everybody. And why this is so important for people to wrap their heads around is everybody can find their plan. This is not a one-opt internet plan. This is a global plan, certainly operating everywhere right now. And I know people call me and they say, well, Deborah, where can we relocate to be safe?
Yeah.
I tell them, look at the plan where you're planning to relocate, the climate action plan. Everybody can type in easily. Mm-hmm. In fact, whoever can right now while we're on this show ought to, so you can explain to the listeners how to do it, because I get a lot of people saying, well, I can't find the plan. Mm-hmm. And so what I recommend is people type in their town. Now, if it's a podunk town in a small town with only a few hundred people, then obviously you're going to need to type in the next town, larger town nearest you, or even just type in the name of your country or your state. And these plans will show up. They're all Agenda 2030 plans of massive reconfiguration of where people live in these human settlement zones. And I can tell you, this is extremely, this is beyond serious. Yeah. We as a human population are being taken out and we're being replaced. And we need to understand the dire moment that we find ourselves in. And when I see people being burned out of their houses here in Northern California back in October of 2017, and then I go to the very city, Santa Rosa, and I see them adopting accounting plans through London, Ernst & Young, and I find out that they're creating new revenue sources to build up on top of the weaponized war results. It's like bombing Dresden, and there's no money. These cities are being pulverized. The town of Paradise is pulverized. Magalia, Redding in Northern California, we have been hit with directed energy weapons, period. And the fact that smart meters were involved, this is all a Rothschild deployment with the smart grid, the global smart grid. Now they're rolling out the wireless water meters everywhere. Think of the additional increased frequencies in our environments. We're being taken over. Our minds are being taken over. We're physically being destroyed, and we're in grave danger. And we have a weapon system now globally aimed at every single one of us. And I can only say this is just a transition into the desired convergence of human and digital bodies. We're getting into a post-humanism reality. Mm-hmm. And I was reading a book about how do you develop laws on identifying the entanglement of bodies that are partially human and yet augmented. They are not kidding. And we are sitting here looking and watching and not using the right vocabulary because we're being literally controlled by words.
Right.
So I'm sorry I ranted like this, but we are at death's door. And there's just no other way to articulate it. And until more people wake up out of their stupor in their artificial life of reality and understand what reality is, we're all in massive danger, and we are in massive danger. So we have to change from abnormal thinking to normal thinking, which is reality. Everyone that is debating us is abnormal thinking. They're in an artificial life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this reality is harsh.
Yeah.
There's no way about it. It is harsh.
Yeah, absolutely.
So since you went into transhumanism, and we know that a huge subject right now is 5G, Do you feel that 5G has a connection with that transhumanism subject?
Well, 5G is a genocide program. The plans, of course, that we've discussed, and Alexandra, we've talked about this too, with the plans to reduce the global populations. That's been in process for a very long time. And I refer often to the report from Iron Mountain. We've been told. And the report from Iron Mountain that came out during the time when there was the transition to Johnson being president after JFK was assassinated. And when that report was first let out, it was said to have been a hoax. It wasn't a hoax. We're living in a fake reality of reports that have told us what is going to happen. And the report from Iron Mountain, the bottom line of that report was to determine the minimum and optimum levels of destruction of life and the destruction of property and the destruction of natural resources. And they had a long range plan, and it's been an incremental plan, and they've been budgeting for it financially. And that's what we're seeing now in our cities. After we're hit with weapons, we're at war. We've been attacked. We've been hit. And then they talk about how this is going to be an annual overt warfare and deliberate poisoning and pollution of our air and water supply. And we know this. And we need to also, while we were talking about Martin Luther King today, I think it's really important for all of us to revisit what JFK told us, because when you look at what he said, and I can only say, maybe many of you today are where I was, but when I first heard his talk, or what he said, and I'm going to read it if you don't mind,
Sure.
just a few paragraphs.
Yeah.
I didn't understand what he meant. I didn't understand the vocabulary of what he meant way back then. And I certainly do now. And everybody needs to revisit this, actually print this off and put it in your kitchen. Read it, understand the enormity of what he said. And I'm going to read it right now. And it's the speech that he gave about secret societies. And he says, quote, "For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system that has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations." And I think we need to think about what this combination is when we think about the machine, and that it combines the military, which it does. In the report I have up on Stop the Crime, the YouTube called Coastlines Under Attack, Storm Surge Artificially Created, everyone that's listening needs to understand all branches of military are involved in this, all branches of attacking our coastlines, demolishing us. And you can watch that for the documents that support that. And all diplomatic. It's all a game. It's just theater. And intelligence, all intelligence. Look how we're being deceived with intelligence. Look at the economic conditions of our country. We are sliding rapidly.
Yes.
We're being equalized.
Yeah.
And we're literally finding that it is the economies of the modern world that are under mass attack now because of the idea that we have to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and CO2 emissions. And we're being interpreted as the overusers compared to the third world countries, but they're still killing off the third world indigenous people as well.
Yeah.
I have a document that talks about how they're killing impoverished women in third world countries through climate change.
Wow.
Now, you can't make this stuff up.
Oh.
We are in the crosshairs, and right now we're having a discussion about war and how we are being targeted by weapons. We're reminded again that JFK told us scientific and political operations. Look at the politics. We are USA Inc. We're a corporation, and we're Earth Inc. They're all working us under the same plan. And the illusion of borders. You asked me about 5G. There are no borders for 5G.
Right.
There are no borders for the overhead aerosol poisoning, mind control, and certainly the transformation of us through nanotechnology.
Right.
We all have Morgellons, which is the tiny bots in our bodies, for heaven's sakes. We are being transformed. We have to say all of this in plain language, our language, not using their language. When I read about how they're telling us we're running out of water, which we're not, waters are renewable, and I would wish everybody would watch the YouTube Primary Water Explained, and they're telling us that now they're going to build more wastewater treatment plants and recycle our water. Let's use the right words. Wastewater is fecal, urine, and pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
That's what they want us to drink, and replace or augment this into our municipal drinking water supplies. And what the World Bank is saying, they're going to inject this toxic water in uphill streams and rivers that will flow into the reservoirs and create a blend. A blend.
Ugh.
So we are being poisoned. We have to certainly work hard to bring in more people to get this resonating so that we can put more human minds on the table of decency and living in right conduct every day, doing the next best right thing, what God wants us to do, and come up with strategies to prolong our survival a bit longer. Because whether we like it or not, this is happening to us, period.
You know, Deborah, we've got a, I'm sorry, we've got a big following, international following that sends us messages all the time. It says your own government is killing you. Don't you know that? How is it that we don't know here in the United States what's happening to us? So many people don't see this.
We have been subverted by distraction. We're also suffering from overweight, from eating a food supply that has marginalized our capability to sleep and to think. And we're indulging in too much flour and sugar. Flour and sugar of any consequence causes cloudy thinking, an inability to think. And it turns more people into being self-centered and focusing on themselves. And we can certainly see that at the beginning of every year when repeatedly people make those resolutions to lose weight, and then the gym memberships go out, go sky high and for a couple of months, and then it falls off again. We have been subdued by a food machine, a poisonous, toxic food machine, an ingenious plan to subdue a population. Drugs, the toxic water. Many of the water supplies here in the United States are fluoridated.
Oh, yeah.
We've been substantially poisoned into submission. And so in order to break free, we have to get down to our right size body weight, get off of flour and sugar, start eating closer to what God wants us to eat, not eating the packaged foods. They're putting bots and nanomaterial in our food supply.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow.
We are being murdered.
Yeah.
Murdered. As everyone says, it's a slow kill, but it is a kill. And it's asset stripping while we're being slowly murdered. We're being murdered.
Yes.
And I see it all around. When you see it, you can't help but not see it. And I can only say that I've been looking up a lot of things. And Alexandra, I know that we've been talking about a lot of things on our roundtables that we've done out of Europe, and we're all in the same boat. In fact, Alexandra, do you know John Weigel in Ireland by any chance?
No. No.
Well, type his name in, John Weigel, W-E-I-G-L-E. I had him on a radio show that I did a couple of days ago, and that will be a YouTube on StopTheCrime.net. And John travels throughout Europe, and he went to Poland recently for a talk with Ollie Johansson about frequencies. And Ollie Johansson said this. He said that any amount of artificial frequency is dangerous. Any amount of artificial frequency.
Wow.
So, you know, we don't need to consider or to be curious what the 5G is going to do. Certainly, it is an entrapment of our minds. We don't need to be put in FEMA camps, although we may be at some point, because we're being trapped and held prisoner within this electric net that has been created around us.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Alexandra, I wanted to ask you, at what stage are they with the 5G where you are in the Czech Republic?
They speak very positively about it in the news.
Mm-hmm.
So no resistance like that you can hear that anybody would say against them. But I hope that when they start to implement it, that many more people will come and speak against it. I will definitely do it.
Mm-hmm. Will they roll it out about the same time that they're rolling it out here? Or have they started the rollout there yet?
I believe they are after you, that you are first. And my feeling about your country, that you are also under severe mind control.
Yep.
I know it's from Sweden. People in Sweden are heavily under mind control. So it's very difficult to speak with them much more than American. And also I believe that the plan for United States or North America goes back many hundred years back, and that the Illuminati were picking your continent specifically to make you like factory for this genocide plan. Now you look 500 years ago, all three of you would look European, isn't it so? 500 years ago, the original native people in North America didn't look like you. So you, or white people or European people, were brought to United States 500 years ago. Then 400 years ago, they took sovereign people in Africa and imported them. It was social engineering already there. And if you look Australia, who are the leading people, who are the leaders, they 500 years ago they would be Europeans. New Zealand the same, Canada the same. So you see that there is something going on, some plan going on hundreds of years ago. And if you would listen to Jacob Rothschild in the beginning of year 2017, he is on BBC talking about Balfour Declaration, which was 100-year old. And by the way, the numbers of Balfour in Declaration is the declaration how the Illuminati got to Jerusalem. It's like 67 words. 6 plus 7 is 13, the Illuminati. And it's from 2nd of November, 11th month. 2 plus 11 is 13. And Baal, Satan. So they got to Jerusalem. And what he's saying, this plan we have got in 3,000 years. And what is Jerusalem and Israel, Jerusalem specifically? It's the headquarters of New World Order. And what do they want? They want to build the third temple of Solomon, which would have been built. They were planning to have it built on the 23rd of September 2017 already. And the man, what we say Antichrist, the genius, military genius and politically genius, would enter it already in 2017. So it's delayed. So, but they have got this plan for 3,000 years.
Yeah.
So you see the social engineering, and your country is like the New World Order for that purpose to develop the weapons,
Yes.
attack you and attack the whole world with them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. And in fact, we went to Cuba just before Thanksgiving of 2018. And in studying the background of the transition from Batista to Castro and President Kennedy's abstaining from going to war, the Bay of Pigs, etc., we learned some things that are not being reported about Cuba as an isolated discussion, which is all of us, because we're USA Inc. and we're Earth Inc. We're all under a massive network of corporate agencies, and it's a franchise network. And we have been propagandized into believing that we have a voting system, that we have a Declaration of Independence, that we have amendments, and we don't. It's just been a framework to keep us imprisoned. And I think what's important to understand is what happened in Vietnam even, and why Vietnam even started. It was because of a massive relocation by the United States of Vietnamese people, which upset everything. And then I was researching, and that's under Operation Phoenix, where they talk about how the plan was to, in cold blood, which did happen, to kill over 60,000 Vietnamese. And what we discovered when we went to Cuba, and this is interesting if you'd like me to recite this, because I didn't know this, and maybe many of the listeners did not know this, about how Cuba was set up.
Okay.
Would you like me to explain that?
Yes,
okay.
please.
Yeah, okay. So it was actually considered Cardinal Spelli's War, AKA, and this is about the Vietnam War and also Cuba. And it goes back to discussing how President Kennedy began to end the Vietnam War as he became aware of its future high point, which would be Operation Phoenix, the CIA mass murder of 60,000 Vietnamese in cold blood, according to the director, William Colby. The president interfering with the Vatican's holy office of the Inquisition could not be tolerated. Millions of heretic Buddhists were to be exterminated, and the international heroin drug trade would be taken over by the Jesuits. American patriotism and liberty would further be destroyed through drugs, and Vietnam would be reunited under another communist military dictator loyal to the Pope, like Stalin, like Chairman Mao, or like Castro, which Castro was CIA, and he was all part of the takeover of Cuba. And they go on to say they waged under the guise of fighting godliness communism, godless communism. So they were fighting, getting us to go to war, always under the guise of fighting a godless communism. And Cardinal Spellman, Spellman, championed America's most disastrous conflict, known as Spelly's War, overseen by Spelly's general, the Roman Catholic and CFR member, William Westmoreland. Remember, according to Colonel Fletcher Prouty, in his JFK, the forced movement of over 600,000 Roman Catholics on U.S. Navy transport vessels from North Vietnam into South Vietnam was one of the root causes of the Vietnam War. The Arch-Catholic Secretary of the Navy responsible for implementing that Jesuit agitation was the Supreme Knight of the Knight of Columbus, Francis Matthews. Knight Matthews Master was America's military Cardinal Spellman. And then later, Spellman made several visits to the war front, calling the American troops the soldiers of Christ, fighting the Pope's crusade against godless Jew communism. The outcome of Cardinal Spelly's War was 58,000 dead Buddhists, 80,000 post-war suicides, $120 billion debt to the Jesuits, the Federal Reserve Bank, for the war machine, and Vatican multi-million-dollar control of the global heroin trade. And since the Vatican takeover of the heroin trade, they're obedient. Listen to this. Listen how we are described. As Alexander said, this has been a plan in existence for many decades. Here's how we are described. Since the Vatican takeover of the heroin trade, their obedient Fourth Amendment American government has been flying in over 50% of the global heroin and cocaine across the border without the need for proper border checks, and promptly turned over to their mafia, the bikers, and subsequently distributed to the unsuspecting American public.
Oh,
so we have been so poisoned and so misled, and the propaganda has existed in our school systems, at the polling places, thinking we can vote. It is insanity what we as Americans have been set up to falsely believe, as we are being murdered and assassinated through a pharmaceutical methodology of killing us, by withholding all of the types of technologies that could promote happier and healthier and longer lives. But instead, we're now recently finding and hearing that our longevity has declined in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And our fertility.
We are being murdered.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at more with what is happening with all the pedophilia and all of the power that's extracted by exploiting children and adults and men, everybody, and putting them in the sex trafficking. And Alexander, I'm sure you have a lot to talk about with that as well. But that is a bloodthirsty, horrific reality that we all have to face, and we can no longer rely on our local police, our local authorities to protect us. It's up to us. There is no justice. Our court system has been set up to advance the criminals and to protect the criminals. And there is no justice. It's just us. That's what it is now. And in order for people to understand some of the solutions, they have to get their brains into reality and stop living in an artificial created reality. Because our solutions are one another. Those of us that want to live in right conduct and want to protect one another, because that is where we are now.
Man, I'm telling you, it sounds pretty bleak. And I'll tell you another reason why this is going to be tough is because we are getting attacked with all of these frequencies, these microwaves. They've weakened us. They've weakened our emotions. They've weakened us physically. We've been brainwashed. And so guys, what are we to do?
We're ripe for the taking.
Yes.
And when you read Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, this was the time of testing to see when it was going to be the best time to literally take us down. And when we look at all of the policies, and again, I really stand on these climate action plans because people are going to question what they're hearing us talk about right now.
Mm-hmm.
They are really going to question that. And so I invite people to become familiar with what those plans say.
Yeah.
It's important to understand that because then you'll learn. And I think I would say part of the foundation to all of this in the understanding is to accept the fact that the weather is completely controlled.
Oh yeah. That's
and there's still a lot of people that don't believe that.
Yeah.
Well,
and so that puts all of us in more danger because we have people that are not recognizing the danger that we're all in.
Yeah, our channel has also been monitoring NEXRAD, and we believe that NEXRAD is being used as a weapon in this country as well. We're seeing abnormal spiking going on all over the country 24/7, which means that, and we're seeing ground clutter like we've never seen before. And the only way that you can see ground clutter from the radar is that it is so low in the atmosphere, it's picking up the ground clutter. So they've lowered the angle of their NEXRAD radar systems, and they're pulsing very powerful microwaves. So you guys are right. We are living right now in a big, huge microwave in this country. And when 5G rolls out, I can only see it. 5G implemented antennas every 4 to 5 houses in every neighborhood. It sounds like game over to me.
Well, we're in Mayday right now over a number of things, not just the intentional targeting of our homes now with directed energy weapons. I was looking at some documents from the World Bank and on the RAND Corporation website. Now, RAND is an extension of Tavistock out of the UK. It's a mind control. All of our universities, if you type in any university in this country, in the United States, followed by climate change, you will find they're all complicit about the illusion that there's too many people using too much stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the policies that are being rolled out are policies of death and genocide and massive reduction and use and access to resources. And I just wanted to say this about the water. And I know that we've talked about this when I've been on prior discussions with Alexandra, but I'm wondering, Alexandra, are you seeing the types of policies there in the Czech Republic about the reduction of water? Because we're being told here in California, in fact, our most recent previous governor brought into law the required reduction of water by the year 2020. We are not individually allowed, or we're supposed to at least be fined and penalized if we use over 55 gallons of water per day per person. And we've had a number of people here experiment with what that would look like. And I would recommend everybody that's listening, try this.
Yeah.
Try to see what your daily use of water is, because I'm going to tell you this, and this is horrifying.
Yeah.
With the people that have been experimenting here in California, people that live alone in a home, for example, they've been unable to get their daily consumption under 190 gallons per day.
Yeah, that makes
so
sense.
They called up the water agency and they said, well, we're experimenting with trying to reduce our water consumption, but we can't. With everything we try, we can't get it down under 190 gallons a day. And the water company told them, are you watering any outdoor plant material? And they said, well, of course. They said, you will no longer be able to water outside plant material.
Wow.
Nobody's.
So what are we talking about?
Garden.
We're talking about also genocide based on oxygen reduction. That's what people have not understood.
Yeah.
When they keep hearing we must lower our CO2, that is reducing oxygen. The plants need the CO2 in order to provide oxygen. That's how That's how psyopsed we are in not understanding the verbiage anymore.
Right. Absolutely correct. Absolutely. Jim and I laugh about that when he's like, oh, we need to get CO2 down to 0. That means we won't be exhaling.
To 0. That means no
there won't
more
be any people.
People.
There
No.
won't be any people.
And by the way, millimeter waves also a conflict with the oxygen. They need oxygen as well. So you're talking about degradation of oxygen also because of the millimeter waves.
Well, and the 5G, that deforms the oxygen molecule right there. So that's hand in hand with their plan.
Have you guys seen the website deagle.com?
Well, I've actually have an interview with Dr. Bill Deagle, who I'm on every Monday out of San Diego. He's not the same Deagle.
Okay.
And we actually have an interview with him up on StopTheCrime.net, and it's entitled 5G, the Killing of Humanity. And I felt it was really interesting to have him discuss that because of it being so close to his name.
Yeah.
And yes, so for those that are listening, I guess if you haven't heard about it, why don't you go on and explain it, and then I'll explain it too.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so Deagle.com is a military surplus type website, and it's got an obscure page on it with a forecast of the population, world forecast of the population. A lot of countries, European countries, the United States, their population is greatly reduced by 2025. What's very alarming here in the United States is the population is to go from 326 million to a little under 100 million by.
We're talking about a reduction of 83%.
Yeah.
So for people who can't do the math because of Common Core math, most people can't do math anymore either.
Right.
So I think it's easier to think in terms of a reduction of 83%, and about 73%, I think it was in the UK. I don't know where it is in Poland or in the Czech Republic, but a massive reduction, and we can see it when the 5G rolls out, which of course our current CEO of USA Inc. has rolled it out. In fact, the United States is promoting 5G in small areas in Poland. I was talking about that with John Weigel, and they were resisting in Krakow, Poland, the deployment of frequencies, and they have now been unseated with that position because it is a global plan. This is a global genocide by the 5G.
Was this written before 4th of July 2013? What this report was it?
Report.
I believe the report was started at 2014, I believe, that I saw, and then it might have been updated recently. I'm not sure exactly when the last time it was updated, but I've been reporting on this for about 2 years, that website.
Yeah.
So
it's crazy. If you haven't seen it, Alexandra, you should go take a look.
Yeah. I've seen it because of Deborah. Deborah was talking about it, but what I was thinking about all these false flags that were prevented. You probably know that there was planned nuclear attack in London 2012 at London Olympics. It was prevented, and then in 2013, from 4th of July 2013, your country would be hit heavily. So if I count the deaths only in 2013, only in your country, those prevented that I know of, so I would say that it's more than 100 million people would die in the 3 attacks: 4th of July 2013, 1st of October 2013, and 17th of October 2013. Especially the 17th of October 2013, it could kill almost 100 million.
Wow.
People.
Now, was that because of the plan to blow up Hoover Dam, Alexandra?
Hoover Dam was later. San Hovedam attack, which is really vicious. This is really, really deadly. The first time they would use it, first time I have seen that they said that they have the technology was on 20th of September 2014. The first time I saw that they wanted to use it is in the end of 2014, in the beginning of 2015. If you have seen a pop song, Bad Blood of Taylor Swift, it's in fact a death threat from the head of Illuminati, William Van Down, to the head of the British, the second faction in Great Britain, Evelyn Rothschild, because they haven't opened the San Hoover Dam. I have been talking about it a lot, and they couldn't do the Hoover Dam, San Hoover Dam attack. I believe it was in February 2015. So he is threatening William Van Down in this song. You should know that these songs many times are death threats to specific people from the head of Illuminati. It's about completely different things than what the singer pretend to. They are like impersonators.
Now, let me ask you, Alexandra, about these songs. Are they in English? Do you have the names of some of these songs so that we can listen to them?
This specific death threats from the head of Illuminati to Evelyn Rothschild, the name is Bad Blood, and it's Taylor Swift. You can see the.
Is that the name? Now that's the name of the song, Bad Blood?
Yeah.
Yes. And
Okay.
you should know that everything which is BB, Bad Blood, B is second letter. So 22, BB,
right.
whatever it is, it means for them Lucifer. If you do this, V, it's 22nd letters in the alphabet, English alphabet. For them, it means Lucifer. So, and when you hear the song, 4 is the number of Illuminati hit, or when Illuminati are killing, very often you see number 4.
So number 4 is death.
Yeah, 44 also, and but you can say it like fourth day or in the week, or you can say delta. It's still like 4. So if you hear the song, the singer say repeatedly words with D D D D D D D. It means I will kill you. You know, it's
now when you're saying D D D D D, that's boy, right? B B B B B.
No, or D like D.
In Deborah.
Like death, like death.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's death threats because, and of course, Illuminati people know what 4 means, D. So, and you can see the representation of CERN. You can see their portals in the video. And also, of course, Evelyn Rothschild knows that specific girls are around or friends of William Van Down. So Hadid, I believe, is the father's friend with him, or a specific girl is supposed to be his consort, I believe, and she's there in the video. And I want to say, when we are talking about the head of Illuminati, what he said about himself, he said that he will transfer his consciousness to another body, that he has the technology.
Yeah, he's going to re-sleeve into a younger body.
Yes, and he said before he took the video down, but I have it, of course, because I'm tracing him, what he's doing. So he said that he will live in New York, in World Trade Tower, because the company that work for him are are there, so it's because of that he will live there. But of course, it's the person who is supposed to enter the third temple of Solomon and proclaim himself to be God. He's a
Wow.
Satanist, as you understand.
Our
And the
friend,
Antichrist. Now,
yeah.
Alexandra, he was, I understand from our prior discussions, that the head of the Illuminati, would you please say his name again?
William.
Yeah, William Van Dam,
I
was
say,
in California, and he recently relocated to New York. And it's interesting to see how Google now has expanded in New York, and Amazon. So that should be very concerning. I wanted to ask you a question, Alexandra.
by the way, I believe I remember that in Davos, it's in the beginning of in Switzerland, 2016, I believe. He moved from California to Rhode Island.